Hello, everyone. It is that Weems guy, and we are here for what? Wow, this is actually 3 weeks in a row that we'll have had an episode. And coming back tonight, Mr. Greg Ellifritz. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Lee?
I'm making it. I'm making it. Last time you were on the show, you were just about to take a trip to Japan.
Yes,
How,
yes.
how did that go?
I got back. It was an interesting trip. If you've never been, it's a strange culture compared to America. It's one of the oddest places I've been to, and I've been quite a few places. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I went, but I doubt I'll be going back.
Okay. Did you see everything you wanted to see?
I did. I spent 2 weeks there. Spent pretty
Okay.
much went through the whole country. I didn't get to Okinawa, but all of the main island there, pretty much the whole everything. So, yeah, I got
What
to see everything I needed to. So.
What was the most interesting thing you saw?
I think where the atomic bomb hit in Hiroshima was kind of cool because there's a big city building that was 400 yards away from the impact zone that was not destroyed, that is still actually functioning.
Wow.
They built up the one section that was destroyed, and that whole area is really cool. Seeing how they recovered from that and what there's you're in if you're in Hiroshima, you're just walking down, city blocks and there'll be completely undamaged stores and schools and buildings that just weren't hurt in the bombing at all, that are still at exactly as they were in the 1940s, I
Wow.
didn't expect to see that. I expected everything to be completely leveled, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I would have thought even if it wasn't leveled, it would have been so irradiated that they couldn't have been able to
Yep.
occupy it.
No, there's lots of schools and buildings that were still there that were within the zone of the bomb.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what was like your biggest disappointment of something you were really excited to see and then like, nah,
The people were very introverted and did not have any real interest in hanging out with foreigners or tourists. And you're
okay.
going to have that everywhere you are to some degree, but it was more intense in Japan than any other place I've been. I think other than, like waiters, waitresses, hotel clerks, that kind of stuff. I don't think I interacted with a single Japanese person that wasn't paid to interact with me. They had
Huh.
no interest, period, in interacting with any of the foreigners. It's an odd culture.
Could that have been because you're 3 times the size of a
It
normal Japanese
might
person?
be, but I went on a National Geographic tour, and none of the rest of the people in my group uh, had any real in-depth conversation with the locals either. So I'm
Okay.
gonna not blame the fact that I'm 300 pounds and they're not. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that brings up a topic we can circle back around to later with the atomic bomb and all the stuff that's going on right now with, Iran and the nuclear
Hmm.
facilities and what we might see as terrorist offshoots
Hmm. Hmm.
from that. Because I got to tell you, 4 years of a completely open border, we've got sleeper cells here.
No doubt, no doubt.
Absolutely, we've got sleeper cells
Yep.
here, and we can come back to that if the other topic dies out. um, Last weekend there were so-called protests or events all across the United States called the No Kings Day. Uh, Most places, just people marching, waving signs. Other places it broke out into violence. We've been seeing what's been going on in LA for several weeks now, and the president federalizing the National Guard, and bringing them in. And it just always brings up the topics of, civil unrest and what are precautions people can take. What do you do if you find yourself in all of a sudden in a spontaneous one? Um, how do you use intelligence to plan about not being where those might turn out, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the best question to start off with was what intelligence sources would you look at as far as knowing where hot spots and stuff are?
Um, Someone wrote in the comments that, talk about the differences between foreign countries and America, and I wanted to mention that first.
Okay,
A
go ahead.
lot of times in foreign countries, when I'm traveling to other places, with less official freedom of speech. In other countries, they tend to have designated areas where protests actually take place. You know, you aren't allowed to just protest anywhere you want. You will protest when where the police say it's okay to do so. And I think it's useful to know those activities is where all of the other protests are in that
Right.
city. That's where the new protests are going to be. So
Yeah.
knowing kind of some of the past history in some other countries is probably really useful. Here in the United States, I think the local news, social media is probably going to be what you're going to be looking for any kind of thing like that with regard to big United States cities. But even in the big cities here, it's just really hard to nail down exactly where everything will be because all of this is so random. You know, like I was telling you before we started recording, last Saturday I had plans to go out to dinner with a friend of mine I hadn't seen for a while, and normally we would have gone into downtown Austin, where I am, for dinner, but there was not a chance last Saturday night that I was going to take the chance of doing that. So we picked a suburban town 45 minutes away from downtown Austin, where we knew there would not going to be any kind of ruckus, and that's where we went out to dinner. Just staying away from all of those real urban areas when you know things are going to be bad is the smartest thing that you can do right off the bat.
There you go. Talking about the designated areas does bring to mind the Supreme Court has said that governments can dictate time, manner, and place. Yeah. In other words, a local city, or county government or whatever, it would be unconstitutional to say you cannot have your event, your
Yes,
protest, your whatever. But we can say you can have between these hours,
sure.
10 to 12 today, we'll shut down this street. You can march down, or we
Right,
can gather in this
right.
park and do that kind of
Yep.
thing. That is permissible under
Yeah,
Supreme Court ruling. Also, it is
yeah,
very common on college campuses in the U.S. now is to designate a so-called free speech zone. That's very common, at least among the university system of Georgia.
yep.
And when people hear that, they get all up in arms and say, "Oh, they're saying only have free speech in this." That's not what that means.
No,
What
no.
that means is that the campus officials have designated an area that you don't need a permit, you don't need to reserve it, you don't need anything. That's open, but it's first come, first serve.
Yep. And as we were talking about before, the real danger with that is the
Yeah.
people who are legitimately trying to protest.
Hmm.
Those people are going to be following the rules, doing protesting in the area where they're supposed to be, where the
Right.
police have protected them from traffic and
Hmm.
anything else. And then those protests get taken over by people from out of town, paid agitators,
Yeah.
who then take over the group and move the group to an area where that they know that they shouldn't be. And that's where it starts getting real dangerous. I was saying
Yeah.
back in 2020 at the police department I work for, we had a protest and it was well organized by our city's residents and they came to police and fire and it was summertime and hot and we closed down a couple of the city streets and set up medical aid stations for everybody. And as soon as they started protesting, their group got taken over by an out-of-town group
Yeah.
that was about 3 times the size of theirs and completely went off script and tried to purposely agitate the police and fire and
Yeah.
get themselves in trouble. And, most of the residents, excuse me, most of our residents weren't trying to cause any trouble, but they got co-opted into these outside agitators
Yeah.
groups and ended up with more than they thought they would be getting into at that point in time.
Yeah. I've seen a very common tactic of someone will infiltrate the actual legitimate group.
Yep.
They'll come up, they will do something to an officer that provokes a response. And then
Yep.
they run back into the crowd and say the cops unleashed tear gas or
Yep.
munitions or whatever. Well, then you get people who actually didn't do anything sometimes get caught up in that.
Sure. Yep.
Um, that does happen. Sometimes I do think there's some collaboration between the
Oh,
two
no
groups,
doubt. No doubt.
but I've also seen it where I legitimately thought that the people that were there that were trying to have an event, they were legitimately trying to be part of the political process. And
Yes.
these other people came and just usurped their event.
Yep. Yep.
And, I've seen it both ways.
Hmm.
And when you start seeing things like impact weapons getting pre-positioned, like bricks being
Yeah.
put in
Yeah.
bushes and
Bricks
stuff like
and
that.
yeah, firewood. That yeah, just stacks of it everywhere. That's a clue.
Yeah. Um, we had a group show up to protest a pet store in my
Okay.
county. And rather than even go out and have any kind of contact with them initially do anything, we ordered a bunch of pizzas and had them delivered to the protesters.
Smart. Smart.
And then later somebody went, "Hey, did you enjoy the pizzas?" You're like, "That was from the sheriff's office?" Yeah, yeah. God bless
Nice.
America. Anybody bothering you? Okay, we'll be over here in case anybody bothers you. And you don't get a violent response from those people.
Right.
During the whole Occupy movement,
Hmm.
we had Athens is the big city in my area. It was very much more vocal and prevalent there. We did have a trailer park in our county that the owner had a single water meter for the entire park,
Oh,
and
okay.
then he quit paying the water bill, and so the county was going to
So
turn
kind of
off,
shut off the water to everybody.
shut off the water, which would have turned off the water for everybody, and they wouldn't have been able to inhabit all the stuff that comes along with that. And so the Occupy crowd shows up to protest on behalf of these people. And really and truly, they were caught up in a bad situation. Well, the only response was because this was at Christmas time, Sheriff Berry went out and handed out candy canes to the protesters. And they're like, "Is this your response?" Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What else you want us to do?
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing an American right here. Matter of fact, if any bothers you, point it out to us. We'll stop them
Yep.
because you're on a public sidewalk. You're not doing
Yeah.
anything illegal. And it was just funny the response. One of the guys had a guitar and started playing Beatles songs. The sheriff stood there and sang Beatles songs with him. And they just could not believe that the cops were actually like protesting. But I understand there's a difference between that and said the black bloc showing up
Sure.
and doing their thing.
Yep. Yep. And that's the other thing you got to get into. You look at the shooting that happened, the guy who accidentally shot someone in the crowd looked to be a member of Black Bloc based on how he was dressed and when he was apprehended. You don't know who is playing what role here. And
Right.
your volunteer security people might have zero training and might be affiliated with some of the groups that you
Yeah.
don't want having weapons in those kind of situations, like that
Right.
guy there.
Yeah. What Greg's talking about is Salt Lake City this past weekend. One of the No Kings things. An individual is seen jogging down the sidewalk and he jogs behind like a little fence and he takes an AR pattern rifle from out of a backpack and then he comes walking out from behind that fence. Well, the actual event organizers had so-called safety volunteers. I believe the one that fired the shots was a veteran, but I don't know of what persuasion. That volunteer safety guy and another both drew down on the guy with the rifle and apparently gave him verbal commands, and he continued towards the crowd. At which point in time, both of them opened fire. The guy with the rifle was not hit, but someone else there in the crowd was, and that gentleman died.
Yep.
And so the guy with the rifle was initially arrested um, on a charge of felony murder. Uh, Now, Greg, could you explain felony murder to the audience?
It's murder that is not committed by the actual person who was arrested. It is a murder charge when you are participating in the murder that is done by someone else. You are also liable for that. So you help plan a bank robbery where someone gets killed, and even though you didn't kill the person, you might be charged with felony murder because that murder happened in the process of committing a felony that you were involved in.
Right. Under Georgia law, it's if anyone dies during the commission of a felony as a result of the felony, whoever did the killing, uh, or say you have a heart attack here while the felony
Yeah.
is going on. And anything like that can be a charge of felony murder.
Yep.
We had an instance where two teenage thugs tried to rob a local country store, and mom and pop weren't having it. And they opened fire and killed one of the robbers, where the other robber was charged with felony
Charged with
murder
the
for his
murder.
accomplice from getting killed.
Yep.
So, to the incident in Utah, it's okay, was that guy just lawfully carrying a rifle, or was he committing a felony? Now, the arrest booking sheet says that he raised it into a firing position and was advancing on the crowd and continued to come after orders. Now, that is based on witness statements.
Yep.
There are numerous videos of the incident circulating on the internet that show that he does not start running until you hear the sounds of the gunfire on the video. Now, we're going to get into that in just a second. But I can see where witnesses see the guy or they hear the gunshots and they turn around and the guy's running
Hmm.
and they tell the cops, so he came running towards us with the gun. And in
Sure.
their mind, it's completely legitimate. But then, like, this overhead camera shows it a little different.
Yep. Yep.
I can see that. Uh, Now, as far as the audio of the gunshots, depending on the distances of the cameras from where the actual sound was generated, the audio may not be recovered till several frames after the actual event, the sound was generated. Uh, Here you have very high rise buildings and the sound is reverberating off of those. And so, I saw one news reporter saying clearly the shots are fired after when they say that. Well, no, they might not have been.
Maybe not.
So I'll
No.
toss it to you to discuss that.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out in those very those areas with high habitation rates and large buildings. It's really tough to figure out where those shots are coming from. On the streets in a city like that, or even inside one of those buildings, it's really, really tough to determine, hey, that shot came from this area or that guy. It's really, really difficult to do that if you haven't tried to do it before. I still remember one night I was working extra security at a bar that we had that had lots of problems, and there was some people started shooting at the end, walking out of the bar into the parking lot, and it was a fairly large parking lot, but not more than a couple hundred yards, and I had no idea where the shots were coming from. It was just a busy city parking lot with lots of people, and shots were being fired everywhere. I had no clue where it was coming from because there were just people and
Yeah.
buildings and cars everywhere. It's just really tough to say, oh, it's happening right there. I'm just gonna, seek cover, put some cover between me and them, and walk out the way, away from the shots. It isn't going to happen that way. It doesn't. It's much more difficult to figure out where they're coming from.
Yeah, that sound waves get to bouncing off of concrete, glass, whatever they reverb around. You
Yep.
can become very disorienting.
Yes.
Very disorienting. As of right now, the individual who came out with the rifle has been charged with felony murder. The two individuals who fired shots have not been charged. And the guy that is unfortunately deceased at this point was not actually involved in the incident. He was just in the background. Um, Brings up old rule number four there again, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
stay away from the stupid people in the stupid places and doing stupid things. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like what I said, when I was going out to dinner last Saturday, there's no way in hell I'm gonna go out to dinner in downtown Austin with all that
Uh,
stuff going on. I'm
uh,
gonna pick a new location. That's your role right there. Find someplace
uh,
safer.
right. Which leads to, as you are traveling, you need to take advance information on the big cities that you're going to go through.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Uh, yeah, I know the major streets in Athens. I don't know all the
You're talking
side.
Athens, Georgia, not
Yeah,
Athens,
yeah,
Greece, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know I know most of the side streets and stuff in Athens. So if I'm driving in Athens and I see something breaking out, I know how to get around it.
Mhm.
In Atlanta, I know the major thoroughfares, I-85, 75, 20, some of the bigger name
Yep.
streets. But if I get off of those,
No.
I know general directions I can head to get back.
Yep.
But if I'm driving across country or I'm going up I-75 and I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and something breaks out, I've got no freaking clue as to what to do.
Yep. Yep. That's the
Um,
tough part right there.
yeah. I need to buy a new Ram McNally road book and put it in each of my vehicles if one of
Yes.
those is still available.
They still make them, but the other thing that you can do is when you're traveling, just stop at the roadside rests, and a lot of them have the free local maps.
Yeah.
So I have a collection of maps from all the states I drive through when I'm
Yeah.
traveling. I just pick up at the roadside rests, and it's not
Yeah.
quite as detailed as the old Rand McNally ones, but
Yeah.
I can get home without using Waze or Google Maps if I have to use my map to get home from
Yeah.
wherever I'm driving.
Yeah. I figure if I can get back to a main highway, I know how to get home.
Yeah,
But it's to me is getting away from something in some downtown urban area.
yeah.
Was driving through Birmingham one day, and I-20 just got backed up for something. And I managed to get to an exit. And if you're not familiar with Birmingham, Alabama, I-20 is elevated
Yep.
going through the downtown
Mhm.
portion of the city. And I just kept making parallel turns, always keeping the elevated portion of the interstate in sight.
On the uh-huh.
And when I finally got to where I didn't see traffic backed up, I found an on ramp and got back on.
There you go.
But I had a general idea of where I was going, and I had a visual landmark that I could use for navigation at the
Right.
time. If it had been nighttime,
Makes it a little tougher.
yeah, if it had been some, Chicago, where I've got no clue, no
Yep.
reference,
Yep.
something like that.
That basic setting on your car's dashboard that can show you which direction you're heading might be kind of useful thing to familiarize yourself with in the car, I may not know where I'm at in this downtown city, but I know I have to get north. So as long as I am heading basically north, that's the right way I need to go. That's the useful piece of equipment that isn't often utilized nowadays.
I still drive a truck with manual transmission and roll up windows, Greg. My dashboard doesn't tell me anything. But
I'm gonna buy you a little cheap compass that you can hang from your rearview mirror.
maybe as long as I've got cell signal, I can pull up my iPhone and look around. Um, but yeah, you turn a corner in one of these streets and you find yourself in one of these mobs. Well, what do you do?
Well, if you can't avoid them in the first place, as first time you see any kind of indication that the roads are blocked or people are being violent, I think you got to back out of there, get out of there as soon as possible. It
Mhm.
isn't the time to, not be paying attention and end up, six cars deep and unable to turn around because you're completely surrounded. You need to be able to notice as soon as possible what's going on and get the heck out as soon as you can without getting a whole lot deeper. If you're on the periphery of one of these things, a lot of the groups know that you're not, deeply enmeshed into either side's propaganda, and they're probably going to let you out. But the farther you get into these situations, the more serious you're going to be taken. And you get deep into some of these things, there isn't any getting out before you're assaulted. So your best bet is to get out as soon as possible when you notice anything is not right.
All right, we had a couple of questions specifically in the show group. Your car's gotten surrounded. What are the pros and cons of trying to drive out of that versus sitting and hoping that help comes versus deploying OC or something
Well,
along those lines?
driving out, is probably going to be my first choice there. Most of the time, you're probably going to be fine driving out if you can get out. But the downside is you driving away angers some of the people there and puts you at the center of everything rather than
Yeah,
escaping. But I think driving out's probably your better way to go. If you can't
I agree.
drive out, OC's possibility. This is a situation where I regularly see people talking about OC grenades.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure that that's the best course of action. I'll tell you, I've thrown a lot of OC grenades in my time. I'll tell you, every single one of them, you know, especially if you're dealing with the civilian type of grenades, the activation on these grenades is immediate. So when you push the button to get the gas, it starts spraying. There's no delay on these grenades. So if you toss a grenade, it's probably going to get rid of the people nearby, but you're definitely going to get some of your own. Watch the way it's pointing because as soon as you press the button, it really starts spraying. Uh, I would pick, a large fire extinguisher type bear spray container rather than a grenade where you could direct the spray. I normally like stream for individual kind of situations, but for big mobs, I like the big cone mist fogger sprays to get a little bit more respiratory action there. But just realize you're probably going to get some yourself in doing that. It's not going to be without consequences to yourself. Every time you're going to spray it in that situation, you're going to get some little backflow.
Cross contamination is contamination too.
It is. It is. People talk about, how do I keep, this stuff in my car without it blowing up? Um, I keep OC in my car. I have never had any blow up on me. I've had one of my students that had a can of OC blow up in his truck that it was rather unpleasant. But usually, even with the hot temperatures, it doesn't blow. You could put something like in a metal GI ammo can for just like everyday kind of storage in the back seat of your car and then pull it out if you're in a situation where you're going downtown, when you're in an area where there is going to be some protest, that kind of stuff. The bigger units there, you can have one, in your trunk in an ammo can, and then, if you're driving into an urban area where there's some of these things, you can pull it out and not be too worried about it blowing up inside the passenger compartment of your car.
Yeah. Um, I think direct, as you're saying, a spray or something that you can kind of direct is better than just like a grenade that's just going to throw it out
I agree. I
and move.
agree.
Um, I think one thing too to kind of bring up there may be area denial
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
something like that is you, like say you're on foot
Hmm.
or you're trapped in traffic and you see in the crowd coming towards you,
Yeah.
disperse a
Yeah.
bunch of fog. Then it's like, all right, if you want to come through that
Yeah.
crowd,
If you want
come
to,
on over.
yeah, absolutely. I don't have any problem with it. But like I said, you're going to get
Yeah,
some too, no doubt
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Um, I have never been in the field in which OC was deployed that the good guys didn't get it to.
No. Every single time. Hundreds of times I've sprayed people, both criminals and new officers and
Yeah,
police academy. Hundreds of times I've exposed people to the OC. Every single time I've
yeah,
gotten a little bit of my own. Not
yeah,
incapacitating for the most part,
yeah.
but every single time I've gotten some on my own.
Yeah, I ran in, I heard another officer screaming for help on the radio. Well, I was chasing somebody on the radio. And I heard the radio call. I responded. When I got out of my car, I could hear them fighting. And I ran in to fight, not knowing that OC had been deployed. And
Hmm.
I ran right into the cloud. And I
Yep.
had to back out, catch my breath before I could come in to actually help my fellow officer. And then thankfully, I looked around as we got after we got the guy in cuffs, and I saw a water hose hooked to a spigot,
Oh,
and that's
nice.
that's how we
There you
deconned. And if that
Uh-huh.
water hose hadn't been there,
It would
it
have been
would have been a
ugly.
rough little while.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I never got all of the OC out of my watch band. I had to just get rid
Uh-huh.
of my watch band and get a new one.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, that's better than getting attacked by a crowd, though.
Right. You got it. You got it. If you are going to rely on the OC, probably a good idea to have some saline solution, like for contact lenses, something in your
Yeah,
car if you're doing that, so you can rinse out your eyes if you do get a blast of it in your face. Some kind of water or saline solution would be really useful in that situation.
one of the other questions is how do you look like the gray man and not like an off-duty cop?
Well, I don't know that off-duty cop is necessarily bad in that situation. It might
Yeah.
be kind of dependent on what you're doing.
Okay.
Um, I don't. I don't like the idea of dressing in all black, like the Antifa group, and playing that route. So you
I don't
got
know if you
somebody
can
trying
hear
to
it.
break. Yeah, I can hear.
The
You
beagle's mad about something.
got somebody
Uh,
breaking in. You're gonna have to lay down a cloud of OC, and we'll show people in real life how to get through this.
I think she saw a squirrel through the back door, and that was it. But it doesn't matter. Squirrel through the back door, UPS man at the front door, somebody across the street getting out of their car. It's the same response.
You're well protected.
well, well alerted. I don't know about
Yes,
well
there you
protected
go.
at
There
all.
you go.
She's actually kind of a scaredy cat, uh, but she's loud. She's good at her job.
Mhm.
Good at her job. I'm sorry, I forgot what you were saying.
I was just saying, if you are going to rely on OC, having some
Yeah,
kind of first aid element to take care of yourself should you get
yeah,
a gust of wind that blows it in
yeah,
your face.
yeah,
Some water to wash your eyes out is probably
yeah,
most useful. It's going to burn on your skin a little bit. It's going to feel kind of like a sunburn, but
yeah,
that's not the most incapacitating stuff.
yeah.
If you get it in your eyes, it's going to suck. So getting some
Uh,
water you can spray that out with would be very, very helpful if you are planning on using OC to get rid of these crowds.
uh, Steve Havey jokingly returns to everybody in the training community as the men in plaid.
Yes.
Because all the males are wearing khaki cargo pants
Uh-huh.
and a plaid T-shirt.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure you do the same thing. Like show up at an event that like you're going to a class or something. Go
Yeah.
sit in the lobby of the hotel and see how
Yeah.
many people the
You
night
can
before
see
you can spot.
exactly who's in your class by what they wear. Yeah.
The one
Uh-huh.
time I got completely befuddled and wrong on that was I was at a hotel in North Little Rock for TACCon, and uh, the Veterans Administration Police Training Academy is in Little Rock.
Okay.
And they had all of their cadets staying at the same hotel that I was in.
Nice.
And they had a bus that was coming to pick them up. And so, like, here was all our TACCOM people over here dressed in the uniform. Here was all
Uh-huh.
these Veterans Affairs cops all dressed in the same uniform. Like, we're
Yep.
all getting out going to different places. That one did befuddle it. Uh, I have taken to, at least on my travel days, wearing jeans instead of any kind of cargo pant
Yeah.
or anything like that. Um, because I think they're less noticeable. Now, I don't wear the 511s or anything like that.
No.
I've got stuff from Duluth Trading Company that doesn't look
Yep.
um, tactical,
Hmm.
so to speak. But, we were talking before we started recording. In the area where I live, like khaki cargo pants and stuff is what everybody wears. It does not stand out. But I went to a class at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia, which is on the coast, 5 hours from me. And anybody there wearing a khaki cargo pant was automatically known to be a FLETC
Yeah.
attendee.
Fed. You got it.
Yeah, and after
Yeah.
my first trip down there, like every subsequent trip, if I left the base, I was wearing blue jeans and a
Yeah.
local school shirt, like a local
Yep.
university shirt or
Smart.
something, so it
Smart.
looked like I was a local guy rather than a cop.
Yep. The danger, we talked a little bit about the issue of sporting event riots. The danger of looking like a local is you dress for the local team and the
Yeah,
riot changes focus from, I want to beat up all the cops to I want to beat up all of the people who are not my team.
oh yeah,
And that's something you got to be aware of if you're trying to dress local.
yeah,
Maybe the local sports team may not be the
yeah,
best choice on
yeah,
game day.
yeah. That's true. That's true. I worked every University of Georgia football game for 10 seasons. And the amount of nonsensical, just idiocy that I saw pertaining to those teams, whoever
Yep.
it was.
Yep.
My mother has graduated from every Southeastern Conference school, Greg. Did you know that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Because whenever somebody he's a whatever. Yeah, my mother went to school there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
Oh,
didn't mean
oh,
that.
sorry. Yeah.
But I have been in the middle of a sports riot,
Yep.
and it is a riot too.
Yep. No doubt. No doubt.
Uh, and that's something that people did not go planning
No.
to be involved in mob action, but then it
No.
loses like this collective. Well, actually, I've
Yeah.
been in the middle of two sports riots because I was a participant in one of them. But they lose their collective sense of responsibility, or the
Yeah.
individual sense of
It becomes an
responsibility
autonomous
becomes a
event
collective one.
all
Yeah,
of itself. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, saw people get trampled to the point of one having a traumatic brain injury.
Mhm.
People that did not want to participate, they got caught in the swell of the crowd
Sure.
and got pushed. University of Wisconsin one year had two people crushed to death at a football game in a crowd situation. Um, Anytime you have large groups of people, you're subject to have catastrophe.
Yes. Yes.
And
Most of these large groups, people talk about getting stomped and all of that kind of stuff,
yeah,
but it's often not the getting out that is the problem. It's the getting into the stadium or the area
yeah,
where the sports are. Because oftentimes, once you are in the stadium, the event location, you can get out by walking out any exit available. But getting in, that's where all of the traffic is constrained because they're checking
yeah,
for tickets and access and that kind of stuff. That's where most people on the sporting events get hurt. It's not the
yeah,
exit, it's the entrance to
yeah,
those kind of things. That's where you got to really be careful is not getting stomped when you're trying to go in one of the two gates that are open to
yeah.
allow people into the stadium.
Yeah, unless there's some sort of panic event that causes people just to, because people tend to run back to the same entrance that they came into.
True.
Um, I believe the two people that were crushed to death at the Wisconsin game was prior to the game.
Hmm.
Um, I got involved in one such incident working security at a UGA game where we had a crush situation. We're trying to clear people out. People actually fought us
Hmm.
as we're trying to clear people out to keep people from getting crushed to death. Um, that's the other thing. People lose any kind of. I have a ticket. I can do whatever
Yeah.
I want to,
Right. Right.
and it's ridiculous. I remember on one game day I was dealing with something, and I know it's not petty, but it's petty. I see these people getting out of a car that's parked in a handicapped spot, and they're clearly not handicapped. And so, sir, I'm gonna give you the option to move that car. It's game day, whatever. And I held up my code book and I said, sir, here's my code book. If you can flip through this thing and you can find me the code section that says you're allowed to park in a handicapped spot on game
The
day,
game day exemption. Yeah.
I'll leave. But if you leave, your car's going with me. It's one of those. Just people lose any kind of sense of personal responsibility
It's true.
in those days. I bought a ticket to this event. I can do whatever I want to.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Uh, one of the times the Braves won the World Series, there was like a massive sports riot in Atlanta, and somebody broke the bat off of a Hank Aaron statue.
Okay.
And I remember the police are trying to clear it out, and one of the local TV reporters sticks a microphone in somebody's face and said, "Look at these cops trying to stop us. What do they expect us to do? Just go home?"
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly.
that's exactly what we expect you to do. Oh yeah. I had been to games where my team won the championship, was in attendance, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't cause any kind of property destruction. I
Right.
did, as a young lad, run onto the field after a national championship game.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's all. I didn't tear anything down, didn't tear
Right.
anything up, anything like that. Um, but I just don't understand the whole mentality of it's okay to tear things up in
Yeah.
celebration.
Yeah. It's
Um,
unusual, but that's the way it happens. When I worked Ohio State doing the same kind of thing at the Ohio
yeah,
State University football games,
yeah,
when we worked those, we seeded the field. We'd let the people onto the field. We couldn't keep them off the field. We'd
yeah,
have protection to keep the goalposts from getting knocked down, but
yeah,
there's no way we could keep people off the
right,
field. So we
right.
just let them have that area.
Yeah, and Ohio State's had some pretty good riots there
Yes. Oh,
versus
yeah. Quite a few.
Michigan State may trump Ohio State. Uh,
Perhaps.
Michigan State, they got on the top of the hill with the trash dumpsters that are on wheels and
Uh,
lit them on fire and were rolling them down the hill like the
yeah,
police
I never
cars.
saw any of that.
um, Now, I'm barely vaguely aware that there is a sport called hockey. It doesn't happen
Yeah,
often
yeah.
in Georgia, but the University of Minnesota won the NCAA hockey championships one year, and downtown Minneapolis, and the Minneapolis cops pushed them into St. Paul. The
Uh-huh.
St. Paul cops pushed them back into, and they played ping pong with
Nice.
the
Well
crowd all
played.
night
Yeah.
long instead of letting it disperse.
Yep. Yep. It's like that 2 a.m. drunk guy walking on your city streets. You pick him up and give him a ride to, the next
Yeah.
jurisdiction over and dump him there and hope those guys find him. It's the same kind of thing.
Oh, y'all play that in Ohio too. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you mentioned something earlier about wearing the wrong sports shirt and everything. One of the things that I kind of gave up on wearing, like team memorabilia and all that kind of stuff, was uh, I was flying back from Tampa, Florida, and I'm already on the airplane, and this guy comes on, and Georgia and Alabama had played for the SEC championship the night before, and Alabama had won. And this guy gets on the plane, and he's wearing an Alabama T-shirt, and he stands at the front of the plane, "Whoa, whip them, train them dogs again," all this kind of stuff, and is yelling like all this on the plane. And I'm sitting there thinking, so glad that I was not wearing anything identifying me as, I'm Georgia alumni, not necessarily a
Yeah.
fan, but I am alumni. Because if I had been wearing like a UGA T-shirt or something like that, yeah, I know what this guy would have done.
Yep. Yep.
And and after that, like even now, if I go to a game, I just wear like a plain black shirt
Yep.
or a plain red
Smart.
shirt or something like that.
Smart.
I don't wear anything with the memorabilia on it anymore.
Yep. I think
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
yeah, and it's even, and it's not even the big ones. It's not
No.
the small colleges and stuff are not immune. One of my schools is a Division II school,
Mhm.
and we won the national championship one year, beat Northwest Missouri State. Some people have listened to this and never even heard of Northwest Missouri State. Great, great, great Division II program. Uh, I kind of like the good sportsmanship thing,
Mhm.
and I'm walking back out of um, the stadium after the game. There are some Northwest Missouri like students sitting around their car, having like the post game tailgate, waiting for the
Mhm.
crowd to enter. And I walked, "Hey guys, great game. I hope you have a safe trip back." I like held out my hand to shake the hand of the guys walking by, and one of them like bowed up.
Mhm.
And then he thought about, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. And he shook my hand. I was like, "No, seriously, guys, have a safe trip back." And they're like, "Cool, you too." And like how easily that could have turned, it would have been 4-on-1 if they'd decided to fall. And
Yep.
this is over a stupid freaking football game.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense, but that's the way it is.
Of course, the great Southern philosopher Louis Gazard said football isn't a sport; it's our way of life versus their way of life. So
It's true.
there is that.
It's true.
There is that. Anything else on the whole crowd topic we need to discuss?
No, I really think, you know, the real utility of this conversation
Yeah,
is really concentrating on not getting yourself involved in these kind of crowd violence
yeah,
situations. Staying away from these large scale riots or
yeah,
festivities is probably the best thing that you can do. So once you get involved in it, it's tough
yeah.
to get out.
Yeah, I saw on some of the forums like people were talking about they were going down to take pictures or just they wanted to see
Don't,
what it was like and that kind of
no,
stuff.
don't. No, well, I kind of get it. I got a friend who
Yeah,
lives in Portland and I talk to all the time. And, back in 2020 when they were having, all of the crazy riots, he's got two teenage sons and he and his sons would go out and just watch what was going on as pure forms of entertainment every night, And
yeah,
when I read, that statement, oh, they're just watching cars burn, it's not a there are people that are legit doing that. They're in the
yeah.
area and this is the entertainment tonight. They're torching some cars. Let's go see what happens. Don't do that. Just stay away. Just stay away.
People chase tornadoes too.
Yes, it's true.
I've seen people pick
Not
up
me.
rattles. Yeah, I've seen
Not
people
me.
pick up rattlers by the tail. That doesn't mean
Right.
it's a good idea.
Nope. Nope. Not a
Yeah,
good plan. Stay
yeah,
away.
yeah. It's nothing good can come from being there.
No.
And
No.
I do want to point out too that there are other parts of the Constitution other than just Second Amendment.
Yes,
And people, whether or not you agree with them, they are exercising just as much of a constitutional right to march, have their say, do
sure.
whatever. Lord, God bless them. Have at it. This
Yep.
is America.
Right.
And if they're upset about me saying God bless them, well, then I'm exercising my First Amendment right too. They need to respect that. Um, but once they start turning into property damage, yeah, they're burning people's cars, they're flipping them over, they're busting windows. Folks, that's not a First Amendment activity anymore. That's a crime.
No, you got it. You got it.
That has turned into a criminal activity. And I have been to, uh, you don't hear about them as much anymore, but I had to work security for some Tea Party events.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, those get just as stupid
Yep.
as the
Yep.
left leaning events.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's people are people.
Yep. Yep.
And it's just their thing. Let's shift gears here. You posted, I think it was a week or so ago, in your weekend knowledge dump about basically imposters in uniform committing crimes. And then lo and behold, this past weekend, we also had the guy dressed up like a cop going around
Yeah.
shooting members of the legislature in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's like, are
Yeah.
you a fortune teller or something, Greg? Clairvoyant?
It's frightening stuff, but I think it's going to happen. There's going to be more and more and more of it coming up. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something to be look out for. Just because somebody has a uniform on, don't expect that they are the person that they are portraying.
Yeah. Now, the news reports are all saying this guy was wearing a latex mask.
Right. Yeah.
Outside of Mission Impossible movies, I have not seen a latex mask that would not be
No.
immediately apparent
Yeah.
that it's a latex
That would
mask.
be very odd,
Yeah,
really unusual.
yeah. I don't believe I'd be opening up the door for such an individual.
No. No.
Um, Now, he reportedly worked in the security industry for a company named Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, that's what's up with that? The Praetorian Guards and their role in historical assassinations seem to
Yeah,
feel a little bit suspicious here.
yeah. Let's kill this emperor and auction off the emperor's seat.
Right.
Yeah, that's not. I don't think who I would hire for my security.
No, no.
Uh, Interestingly enough, in the reporting on it, when I look at more right leaning media, the people who were targeted were Democrats who voted with Republicans on this certain key issue. Like one of them they're saying
Okay.
is the only Democrat to vote for stripping health benefits from illegal immigrants or whatever.
Okay.
When I look at the left leaning ones, it paints them as they were conservatives who were in favor of abortion rights and he killed them because they were in favor of abortion. And
Okay.
so,
Yeah, even the stories between the two groups are
yeah,
wildly disparate.
that's telling to me. It's well odd to me. I would say that knowing who appointed him to a position twice,
Yeah.
I tend to think I know which political leaning he is,
Yeah, that'd be a
than
fair bet.
rather than what's being reported by those sources. But here's the thing: if you're only looking at one side of the spectrum, if you are a left leaning and you're looking at only the left leaning news sources, oh, this man, he killed people who were in favor of this abortion. And if you're
Yep.
right leaning and you look, uh, and I should have done it camera left and camera right instead of
Right,
left to
right.
right. Um, well, oh yeah, look at those Democrats. They killed the guy that and the woman that actually sided with what we believe.
Yep.
And so it feeds into the whole political spectrum. Um, I think the one thing that is telling there is that this was obviously a planned, thought out event.
No doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Any insight?
No, that whole thing, most of us don't have cops showing up at our door on a regular basis.
Yeah,
use a little caution when you see that, and just expect, just because you see a uniform, don't expect that that is exactly what you're getting, because there's quite a few, uh, especially in the terrorist realms, of using military or police uniforms to accomplish their criminal or terroristic goal, and it's quite
Yeah.
common all over the world for
Uh,
criminals to dress up like cops, because that gives them uh the excuse to be in certain places that they wouldn't otherwise have the reason to be there. So it works really, really well. But because it works really well, you got to be very cautious of that.
if you show up with a clipboard and you act like you're supposed to be there, you can get access to a lot of places.
It's true. It's true.
I was getting my hair cut the other day, and this guy walked in, and the people there at the shop said, "Hey, have you signed in online for whatever?" He said, "Oh, I work for so and so. I'm just here to check the meter in the back." Oh yeah, go ahead. And the guy's wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and they just let him walk right
Yep.
through the store, and it's like, and I'm watching him in the mirror as he walks by, going,
Uh-huh.
well, that guy ain't wearing nothing that identifies him as for whatever company
Yes.
that is.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with the uniforms, the insignia, like you or I would have immediately noticed something wrong with his uniform
Yep. Yep.
if we had been at home.
Yep.
Shoot, the little town I live in, I trained over half of their agency.
Sure.
I know them.
Yep.
So if somebody starts showing up in my door in a uniform, I'm going to be looking at shoulder patches. I'm going to be looking at other things.
Right. Right.
And of course, as you just heard, my alarm system's going to be going off to the point that they're not sneaking up on me.
Yes.
So I've got a you know 16-legged alarm system in here because there's four of them,
There you
but
go.
and they don't miss a beat. But another thing that struck out to me, and this is all just from the reporting from that incident, was the cops went to the home of one of the other legislature. Like something tipped them off. There was
Yep.
something in
Yep.
the and he left
Yep.
behind. Something he
Yep.
said. There's something that's not being reported
Yes.
that the cops
Yes.
on the ground knew.
Yep.
And that's what I'm waiting for that to come
Interesting
out.
to
Is
see what
how
that
did they
is.
know
Yep.
to go to
Yep.
that house
Right.
and check on
Yep.
them? And of course,
Could be
as
something that the victims told the cops before they
yeah,
died too. So,
yeah. Well, I think the people at the first house lived. The people at the
okay,
second house
both of them.
died.
Okay,
Yeah. At one of the houses, the husband and wife were both injured
okay,
and lived, and they were shot multiple times
that's
each.
what I heard. Yeah.
And then it was the victims at the other house, both the husband and wife were killed,
Okay,
is my
okay.
understanding. I may be wrong on that. But cops engaged in gunfire
Yeah, yeah,
with this guy, and he ran through the house and got away.
yeah.
So, yeah, wasn't there. Middle of the
No,
night. Middle of the night. I didn't get shooter ready, attention, or stand
right,
by
right.
and a beep. It was like, oh
Here it
my God,
is.
there's the bad guy. Oh, and he's
There he
shooting
is.
at me
Yep.
is the start signal.
Right.
That's a
Yep.
completely different ball game.
And with the mask that he's wearing, could you
Mm-hmm.
imagine thinking, what is this? Is this somebody trying to play a joke on me? Is this a costume contest?
Yeah,
Is,
right.
what's going on here when you see that?
Yeah. Of course, you would hope that if you're being dispatched to a residence because,
That it's that
hey, they
serious.
just killed the other legislators over here or just shot them, go check on
Right.
those guys.
Yeah.
You would think that the posture when you show up will
Yeah, you
be a
might be
little bit
ready.
different than our 17th false burglar alarm
No
tonight.
doubt. Yes.
You would think that, but you know, is what it is. Like I said, we don't know how it all transpired. It could have been they pulled up, in front of the house and he starts shooting at them from the door.
Yep. Yep.
And of course, we could all say park down the street, walk up, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but we don't know what actually happened on scene there.
No.
Yeah. Um, we've got pretty significant incidents going on in the Middle East right now.
Yes.
Um, the United States cannot be struck at directly militarily from this conflict. in any significant way. What are your thoughts and concerns about people who came across the open border the last 4 years that are here in the country, sleeper cells, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I really don't know. Um, if you look at the work, there's a scholar named Sageman that did a lot of work on sleeper cells back about 20 years ago when Al Qaeda and 9/11 were happening. And he was convinced that there is absolutely no Al Qaeda or Islamic terrorist sleeper cells in the United States. But again, this was research from 20 years ago. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's the case now,
right.
given that our border's been open for so long, been so easy for that to happen. Wouldn't surprise me a bit if we had some sleeper cells here.
Yeah. I'm struck by the reporting on what just happened in in Iran with that the Mossad infiltrated Israel and built drone bases
In
to
Iran.
launch drone attacks in Iran.
Right.
And then the Ukrainians did something very similar
Yes, in
in
Russia.
Russia. Like they went in with drones in the back of trucks and on a
Yep.
train
Yep.
and launched them and took out stuff. And then we see all these reports of Chinese coming and buying farmland next to U.S. military bases.
Yeah. Certainly strange.
I hope our people that deal with that are reading or watching what the Ukrainians and the Israelis did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're being proactive on our end.
Yep. Yep.
Um, do you have any idea of like what size drones we're talking about here?
I don't know anything about it. No clue.
Yeah, I'm completely
But
unfamiliar with.
if you look at the type of drones that the drug cartels are using, either, in small scale bombings or to
Yeah,
deliver packages, this is
yeah,
kind of, Walmart style drones. This
yeah,
isn't, really high intensity stuff. This is stuff that
yeah,
anybody can buy and modify themselves pretty easily.
yeah. Um, and it doesn't take much size of an explosive to do some damage.
Nope. Nope.
Now, obviously, to take out a missile launch site, it's got to have some size, but to fly it up to next to the cockpit or into the engine of a plane and blow it up doesn't have to be
Shouldn't be
that
any
big at all.
difficulty. Nope.
Yeah. Um, that's right. I'm at the mercy of what I can read in the reports on that because I don't have any firsthand knowledge or
Yeah.
anything of it. And it's just seeing it happen in, the way it's being reported as in the Ukraine and the way it's been reported in Iran, it just sets off alarm bells.
Yeah, I
I
think we're
mean,
gonna see more and more of them. I don't think it's a scary situation when you really think about what could
yeah,
happen with this in the future, but I don't see any way that it's not going to be a major way that we kill each other in the future. You look at
yeah,
what's happened going on in Ukraine right now, and it's all drone stuff.
yeah. I wonder if the U.S. sits out and it's just Israel and Iran trading blows. I don't know if there's as much to worry about as if we decide to go in and drop a bunker buster
Right.
and get directly involved. Then that open up? All right, there's got to be some sort of retaliation here,
Yep.
and the only way they could retaliate effectively against us would be some sort of terrorist attack.
Yep.
You know, I guess they could launch a missile at a ship in the Persian Gulf, but
Yeah. But
um, yeah, I think we can deal with that pretty effectively.
yep.
Um, I did see some footage that was shot by a mutual acquaintance of mine. I can't say his name
Mhm.
in this open source, who is currently stationed in Kuwait.
Uh-huh.
And he, with a cell phone, took video of missiles being launched from
Uh-huh.
Iran. And that's some pretty big missiles.
Yes. Yes.
I was picturing like the little things on the back of a truck.
No, no,
No, those are some
no.
ballistic things.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's about it. Stay away from all these large scale, riots, demonstrations, protests, whatever you want to call them. Stay
Yeah.
away. Keep home.
All right. Now, I know you're back on the road teaching a good bit right now. What all
I
you got
am.
coming up?
I am. I'll be in Ohio this coming weekend. This next weekend, I guess it's Saturday now. So, um, Ohio next weekend, and then Texas after that for a couple weekends straight, and then start my normal schedule, a couple weekends a month.
All right. What are you teaching in Ohio this coming week?
Excuse me,
Oh,
one more time.
what are you teaching in Ohio this coming week?
I'm doing a knife instructor class, 2 day knife instructor class
Okay, and
in
that's
Ohio.
at Blackwing in Delaware.
Blackwing in Delaware. You got it.
All right. And
Just north of
then
Columbus.
what do you have coming up? I'm assuming it's at Carl's place.
Carl's, I've got a knife instructor as well, and I've got a an off-grid wound care and a citizens response to terrorist bombing class.
Okay.
Both those are July and August.
That one certainly matches up
Appropriate
with
for this, yeah.
with tonight's discussion. And hey,
Yes.
folks, the knife classes, you don't have any ammo count for that.
That's right. A lot cheaper. Don't have
Yeah, a lot
to,
cheaper.
pay a couple $100 for 9mm ammo for the day.
Yeah, and the medical class, you won't have
That's
any
true.
ammo for that.
You got it.
You taught a close range gunfighting instructor development course here
I
recently. Tell me
did.
about that.
I just taught it at Carl's place. It's the second time I've done the class.
Uh,
I only did it one other time. It ended up, I had a police department that brought me in, and it turned out that all of the students were instructors. So I decided to make it an instructor class.
okay.
Um, and it's gone really well. Had 22 people at Carl's Place in Bastrop for that one, and I've got one more filled up in Ohio, and I've got one filled up at Ed Monk's place as well. So doing three this year, and all three are completely full. So 2 days of my close quarter gunfighting program, and basically as we go along, I cover this is why I teach these techniques, and this is the instructional element of everything. So you both learn the skills and how to teach them in those classes.
Cool. Cool. Maybe we can get you close to Georgia for that at
Sure,
some point coming up.
sure.
My ability to travel has just been severely diminished.
Yeah, you got a real job. Come on now.
Oh, I had a real job, but I had a real job that I could control my schedule and it'll allow me to go where I don't
Yes,
control my schedule anymore. But um, and it doesn't allow me to teach enough to have enough money to go places
it's true.
to do that kind of thing. All right. Well, Greg, anything else? Any closing thoughts? Anything?
That's it. Be careful. Stay away from large groups of crazy people.
Well, I am struck by it is a Saturday night and neither one of us is going out to have fun and neither one of us is going out to chase bad guys on a Saturday night.
No,
We
no.
are officially old, Greg.
It's true. And everybody who is watching or listening would be, very, very smart to emulate our exciting Saturday evenings.
Thursday was a state holiday
Uh-huh.
and it was Juneteenth, and I was at home and had the TV on. And I'm watching like Bonanza and all
Uh-huh.
those old shows, and like all the commercials for all like these old age products and everything like
Uh-huh.
that. I'm thinking,
This,
wow, this is my demographic now.
uh,
Because I remember watching these shows and I was like 10.
I just found that on Amazon Prime they have all of Kojak on Amazon Prime. So I this week I've watched the first three episodes of the original Kojak from 1973 and thinking, wow, things were done a little differently back then. So
Yeah, who loves you, baby?
that's right. I'm gonna start dumb dumb suckers everywhere.
Yeah, it always, on some of those old shows, like they have to go in and ask, can they use somebody's phone, all that
Yeah,
kind of
right,
stuff and
right.
everything. It's like they'll just pull out the cell phone, have instant access to everything and everything.
A
Wow.
little different.
Yeah. All right, Greg, as always, it is great to talk with you.
Likewise, sir.
And I appreciate you coming on here on a Saturday night.
Glad for you to have me. Be on anytime you need me.
All right. And anytime you got anything you want to discuss, just hit me up and
Thank you.
we'll get it recorded and put it out there.
Thanks.
All right. And to the audience, you'll be hearing this on Monday morning. But thank you for choosing to spend your time with us.